It is a winter wonderland. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the first Fishtrap Fireside of 2022. Fireside is a monthly reading series designed to feature diverse voices from local writers here in Wallowa County. Each month offers a fresh look at what people of the West are thinking about and writing down. This month, you'll hear from longtime Fishtrap friend Sara Miller, a new but familiar voice to Fireside in Marika Straw, plus a special appearance from Fishtrap's executive director, Shannon McNerney. January's Fishtrap Fireside is sponsored by Ruby Peak Naturals, a natural health food store and enterprise who specialize in local and organic foods, sandwiches, oh, I love those sandwiches, and healthful drinks. Thanks, Ruby Peak Naturals. Before we get going, I want to let you know that registration for Winter Fishtrap is open now. It's an online conference taking place Saturday mornings, January 22nd and 29. Our theme this year is drought. Now that's something that everyone in the West is thinking about. Go to fishtrap.org to learn more and register for Winter Fishtrap. Okay, let's get to our first reader. I'm so glad to know that Shannon McNerney is taking a chance to step out from behind her executive director desk at Fishtrap and stretch her legs a little bit as a writer. Shannon McNerney is an Oregonian by choice. Born in Denver, her family moved to Portland before she had words to express her opinion on the subject. Shortly after she received her music degree from the University of Oregon, her family moved away, but Shannon chose to stay in the state, a choice she's never regretted. Shannon has always worked in the arts. Prior to coming to Fishtrap, she was a music teacher and singer. She worked in music publishing for 13 years and was the executive director of the Portland Symphonic Choir. Shannon now lives, writes, sings, cooks, gardens, and snuggles with her dogs and cats at her dream home in Joseph, Oregon. Please welcome Shannon McDerney.
I'm going to read a couple of pieces that came out of a literary arts lyric essay class that I took with Perrin Kearns. Didn't take a Fishtrap class, but did it with literary arts so I could be Shannon in the class. And so these are a couple of pieces that came out of that really wonderful experience this fall. 8 things I know about you. Number 1, your hair. I have a lock of your hair in an envelope in my picture trunk. Blonde and curly, a couple of inches long. Your hair got darker as you got older, settling into a red gold before it turned white, getting finer and softer, just like you did for a while. Number 2, your hands. Your hands were my biggest fascination when I was small, warm and strong, always moving, the perfect size for little hands to play with, tapping out rhythms on the steering wheel during long road trips, your musical contribution to my inheritance. They look the same, but smaller now, more tentative, pushing buttons on remotes, trembling like your father's did. Number 3, your eyes. Changing from the bluest blue to the palest gray, sparkling when you laugh, bulging and grotesque when you're angry, always searching, tearing up more easily than one would expect. When unguarded, they showed us who you really were, who you could be, the best of you. Number 4, your cameras. An extension of your arm, a shield really, always watching, almost a passion. The carefully curated images, creating a collage of who you wanted to be in our eyes. Now they sit on shelves, in boxes, on tables, gathering dust, replaced by recliners and remotes. Their hostages caged in canisters, on hard drives, unseen. Number 5, your horses. A sign of your strength, your grace and youth, your beauty reflected in raised tails, arched necks, and knowing eyes. Your escape from a world too small and cold. Along with your dogs and your children, you showed them off in front of your friends, bragging of their gifts and accomplishments, raged when they disappointed you with their own will. The messy days and cleanups best left to others to manage. An impenetrable silence surrounded you when they were gone. Number 6, your temper. Unpredictable. We were wary, watching, ready to hide. Hot and fierce, it hinted at a violence scarcely delivered. The threat was enough. A rage that terrified anything with a heartbeat. The power and the promise of a storm to come that could be thwarted with our submission. Number 7, your words. The most powerful part of you. A legacy of your heritage, used to enchant, enthrall, entertain, convince, cajole, and cut. Their strength not just in their presence, but in their silence. Number 8, your father. Gone almost 30 years now, he still holds sway over you the way I guess most fathers do. His power now in all the things he wasn't or couldn't be as a father. Happy, present, kind, vulnerable. That last unpassed down as a legacy to his children and grandchildren. From Wikipedia. The Iwatemlacan State Heritage Site, a public park in the US state of Oregon, is on the south edge of Joseph along Oregon Route 351. Its name comes from the Nez Perce place, Iwatemlacan, which means at the edge of the lake. There were 10 years between the time I saw that word for the first time and actually heard it spoken. Another 5 before I would begin to comprehend what it meant, barely. I was riding in the back seat of my best friend's Explorer, her then husband driving, as all then husbands seemed to do at the time, their 4-year-old son sleeping next to me in his car seat. We'd spent a full day driving, no destination less than 30 minutes from the last stop. As beautiful as the scenery was, there was only so much I could see from where I sat. Kelly's tall frame blocking the front windshield and Alex's toddler window screen blocking the side passenger window. Not having spent that much time in a back seat of a car since I lived with my parents, I was neck sore and a little car sick. My tour guide spoke a local lexicon of geology and local landmarks, all meaningless to me at the time. Moraine, Hat Point, Lick Creek, Promise, Troy, up the Minam. We rounded a corner, the aforementioned moraine in sight, when I spotted the word Iwatemlacan on one of those brown state heritage signs, IWETEMLAYKIN, an improbable collision of vowels and consonants. I tried to sound it out in my head, curiosity and insecurity battling it out when the lake came into view. All thoughts of the word enchanted away by the mirror water reflecting the mountains in its surface. 3 days later, I returned to my city life, still ensorcelled. I wanted, no, needed to go back, to breathe the air, explore the mountains, lie on my back and look at the stars. It felt like home in a way I'd never experienced before. That it could be my home seemed as unlikely a possibility as I can imagine. This place was quite literally in the middle of nowhere, 90 minutes from the nearest freeway, 150 miles from a city with 100,000 people. 4 seasons, the coldest often lasting 6 months, and no stoplight in the entire county of 7,000 people. I put it out of my left brain. The right brain, the dreamer's brain, not so much. 10 years later, and I'm finding myself on a pre-job interview tour of an old craftsman house that will be my next office, guided by a lean, deep-voiced, plaid-clad man who will go on to be my work partner. After questioning me on my coffee preference, he asks how I'm going to spend the rest of the day when the committee was through with me. My friends and I are headed to Joseph, I tell him. Do a little shopping, head to the lake. You should go to Iwatemlacan, he says. I should do what? I ask. But a tiny thread tries to connect in my memory. Impossible consonants, brown signs. Go to Iwatemlacan. It's a sweet little park next to the lake. I make the interns practice saying the name out loud, tell them they can't tell anyone they worked here until they can say it without pausing. I make a mental note to practice it over and over again. Well, what if there's a test? I really want this job. Many goodbyes, moving boxes, and months later, I find myself in a job gradually becoming mine. There's little in this new life that resembles the old. I'm living in a community where deer are as numerous on my street as bicycles were in my old Portland neighborhood. Weather is the master of all, with the mountains its sentry. Years pass, and I've survived frozen pipes, hoarfrosts, snow drifts, mud seasons, balling seasons, fire seasons, and harvest seasons that include things with heartbeats. I've seen kokanee spawn in the Wallowa, laid in my own backyard to add my marveling to the Milky Way, and seen big bucks show off their masculinity in my neighbor's front yard. I've heard coyote when I take out my garbage at night, and owls calling to each other in the pre-dawn hours as I make my coffee. I slowly learn the lexicon, calling this place my home, but I never feel fully settled. How long have you been in the county? Replaces what do you do as small talk, greeting. I'm surrounded by business owners who graduated from the local high school, just like their parents, back to the landers who moved here in the 60s and 70s, seventh generation ranch families who worry over wolves, all quick to point out, I'm not a local, not from here. Neither are they, of course. This is the home of the Nimipu, the people. I think that if this world were just, I just shouldn't be here. But here I am, in one of the prettiest parts of a pretty state. My house becomes a tourist destination for my friends and family. I drive guest after guest on the mandatory tour of the lake. And sometimes as we pass that brown sign, I'm asked, how do you say that word? Not one knowing that I practice before they get to the county, anticipating the inquiry. For a while, my confidence in my pronunciation is inconsistent and unreliable. Insecurity still in charge. Then one day it isn't. Iwatemlikan, I say with conviction, without pause. The word spills forth like the snow-fed Wallowa rushing into the deep lake, like the rain coming down from the dark clouds hovering over the Zumwalt. The word of this place, land-born, Iwatemlikan, beside the lake. This place claiming the person that lives here, speaking the word through me. Home. Thank you.
That was great. Hey, I want to tell you about an online virtual workshop coming up in February. It's perfect for Valentine's Day. It's called Bad Love Poems. The workshop will explore and challenge the conventions of love poetry. I think you should check it out at fishtrap.org. Also, I want to let you know that registration for the 35th Summer Fishtrap Gathering of Writers opens February 1st. After 2 years of virtual Summer Fishtrap Weeks, we're really looking forward to being able to gather together at Wallowa Lake Lodge next summer. Check out all the workshops and instructors at fishtrap.org. Okay, Sara Miller is our next reader, and she has been with Fishtrap since the very beginning. Sara Miller writes essays, poetry, an online journal, and lots of letters. Sara and her husband have often worked in remote places where letter writing is the best way to communicate. When they lived at Doug Bar, she sent letters via mailboat. That's old school, man. Her work has also appeared in newspapers, poetry journals, and anthologies. Here's a fun fact. Back in 1988, Sara volunteered on the founding Fishtrap board and remembers arguing with Fishtrap co-founder Alvin Josephi over his proposal to raise summer Fishtrap registration from $25 to $50. That's the old days. Sara has kept on writing during the pandemic, experimenting with liturgy, which is writing for religious ceremonies, an experience she describes as one of risk-taking, acceptance, and human connection. Sara says, even though I'm getting older, I still appreciate opportunities to create ritual and help with hard work, especially babies and birth, death and love, ranching, and wild and lonely places. Please welcome Sara Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm very grateful to be able to be part of Fireside this evening. And I'm going to start by reading some poems from a series of pandemic poems. I'm going to be reading some poems from the very beginning of the series, which I started back in March of 2020. There are a number of sections, and I'm just going to pause between each section. You should also know that I mentioned a McCarty, and a McCarty is a twisted horsehair rope that is attached to a bozal and used as reins and a lead when you're riding. In the midst of a plague or something like it, we are asked to come to grips with imaginary friends. We are asked to call into the dark yard the names of brothers still clamoring in the trees, their leafy faces shuddering despite an airless calm. In the midst of a plague or something like it, I'm still here under a familiar cleft of sky, wedged between familiar rocks, rocks laid down in a destructive, calamitous past, a past that now feels evaporated into no kind of word. So she made a sound, a long and wondering sound of what might come of never breathing again. Baby pink, blue sail, breath bygone, in wave upon breathless wave, with a tide that flattens us among the crabs, cold seaweed fingering our necks. In spite of love and all that fiery and stunning plunder stored up in cellars or layered into cupboards for when we might never know, we still end up in prohibition, where even our souls are hungry and alone. Mother died. She died just before it, but could have easily imagined it, and had she been asked, would have answered, certainly, and told what she knew of dark and spreading germ. Perhaps thinking of man's discovery riding in with vials that would save us long enough to nail a different lid on the world in some time yet to come. His dominoes are incredible, lined up like refugees, like soldiers ordered precisely one in front of the other, the law of gravity pushing them up and over a bridge, not a man out of line, each slab toppling against another until not a one is left standing. Tomorrow, we'll ride upriver on the greasy bench trail, and I'll say everything is the same as always. Going down into Division Creek, my toes barely in the stirrups, one hand on the horn, willing myself not to lean away from the edge, not to throw my horse off balance. And along the open swells, I'll sway in my saddle pretty much the way I always have, shoulders slumped, hat rocking, lightly holding the McCarty, until an ill-placed hoof skids sideways. And though the solid ground is still solid, every part clenches. We'll head south to Magpie and into the draw and come back with the cows we've gone after. And we'll ride home like we always do, looking north and west, thinking to ourselves, pretending our thoughts are about the same as all the other times before. I hear her 4-year-old voice singing as she flies happily back and forth in the maw of the tire swing. I have to hold on, I have to hold on, I have to hold on, I have to hold on. This next poem is a new form which I decided to try in honor of Fireside. It's called a collect. And I have been experimenting a little bit with writing liturgy, which is basically poetry that becomes part of a ceremony, a religious ceremony. And a collect has 5 folds or 5 parts. And the folds are: name who you are praying to, say more about the one to whom you're praying, name your single request, say more about your request, and finish with a bird of praise or amen. So here's a collect. I pray to Sharon, who died an ovarian death the day Tara pushed Helen out of her womb. I pray to Sharon, who visited me in the canyon soon after dying, soaring past above the benches and making me think, Madonna, not for sleeping with God, but for a fiery calm, and because you looked for me and found me there in the low deep. I ask for acceptance of self-love. I ask you to show me the good in not dreaming big, in only wanting the same thing all these years, to believe in a love I've always had, and if it leaves me, I'll not know myself. And I keep hearing that if I want to go on helping other people stay alive, if I want to keep helping other people die, I must believe in myself. You told me a story once that was like a fire that warmed me, with hands that calmed me, with ears that followed my voice, a centering place, a place to rest. You showed me more of what I want to give to others. Now show me how to give that to myself. Big-winged and strong like a heron, I watched you sailing along, enjoying the beauty, the river course, the meanders. And I waved and I called out to you, Sharon, good to see you. It must be amazing, the view. Thank you for coming. Amen. This next piece is called Immolation. I loved my husband's only brother before his deficiency, the cough, the fevers. I still love him. After his funeral, the priest implied it wasn't sex with a man that killed him. It was so many wanted him. The priest said this from experience. We took in his matching spoons, his towels, the new mattress spattered brown that we still sleep on. Before his tasteful things arrived, we lived with broken lamps, their bulbs unscrewed at night. My husband looks like his brother, pierced and scratched, an incendiary light leaking from the core. And this next piece is also an attempt to write to a form. I really loved having Fireside has a number of times inspired me to write to forms, which I never do, so it's cool. And this was inspired by a quote that a friend of mine sent to me. And it's a quote from Anna Sewell. And it's called, the quote says, do you know why this world is as bad as it is? It is because people think only about their own business and won't trouble themselves to stand up for the oppressed, nor bring the wrongdoer to light. And I tried to start out writing a sestina, which is a very complicated form, 6-line form with a very complicated repetition scheme, and I failed. So what I ended up writing was a quintana, which is a 5-line form. And it's called "And Bring Themselves to Light Sometimes." A hunger we no longer feel divides the months between us. In days, then weeks, until we long for each other no longer and hunger only for time. Trouble yourself to stop thinking the way you've always thought and bring yourself to light sometimes. In this troubled world, we are all wrongdoers. What if what we need is sitting down, not standing up? And if what we need stands pressed together, or can't stand anymore, or is stood upon, what then? The world cannot be bad. It can only be the world, and we can only be ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Hey, in February comes the big read. Join us as we celebrate The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. This landmark story collection is recognized by critics, professors, and readers of all ages as one of the most important contributions to modern literature. Fishtrap will provide events and discussions mid-February through March. Keep an eye out for a full schedule soon. Okay, our final reader is Marika Straw. Marika is a Wallowa County born queer, non-binary Jew. After learning, exploring, and growing in the Midwest, India, and North Carolina with other queers, Jews, musicians, community organizers, and human rights activists, they returned in 2020 to deepen their relationships with Wallowa County and with themselves. In addition to enjoying writing, they delight in playing music, exploring natural beauty, engaging in Jewish practice and community, petting cats, and celebrating queerness everywhere it occurs. Please welcome Marika Straw.
Thank you, Mike. So when I was thinking about what I should read for Fishtrap Fireside, my first instinct was to go back through older poetry because I haven't been writing very much. And I haven't been thinking about writing very much, but I realized I've been in a period of great transition in my life, and even things that I wrote a few months ago are not feeling as timely. So I thought about something else I've been thinking a lot about, which is stories and storytelling, and what kinds of stories I think are important to tell, and what kinds of stories I would like to see more of. And so, like any good procrastinator, I wrote this 2 days ago because I actually do creativity really well under a deadline. And this is the story that came up for me that felt timely and beautiful to share in this moment. I hope you enjoy it. I hadn't even been sure Cynthia would be willing to meet up with me when I visited Asheville a year and some change after I'd seen her last. Not only because she's one of the most COVID protective people I know, but also because of what she had said to me the last time I'd seen her. We were standing a tense 6 feet away from each other, wearing masks on the makeshift bridge over the trash-infested creek to the construction site behind the falling apart rental I only stayed in for 3 months. She'd taken a long, hard look at me and said, "I just need you to know that I can't do this too many more times. Each time you push me away, it hurts more. If you want to get close to me again, I'll really have to think about it." The boundary was well-deserved, and, in a sense, I was proud of her for it. Proud of her for standing up for herself and not taking any more of my shit. It was the 3rd time I had initiated and then broken things off with her in the 3 years I had lived in Asheville. Each time I'd felt intensely drawn to her, but then, just as things were really getting going, I would break it off. guilty, confused, and ashamed yet again for creating such a hot and cold pattern with this person I admired so much. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out that one, why I felt so drawn to her but seemed so unable to be with her. I could name some of the why, but for many of the reasons I'm still too ashamed to. Regretful of the ways I wasn't willing to work on what I would have needed to work on to be with her, and guilty for being so selfish. When it comes down to it, though, sometimes I think I was just scared. Scared of someone I wanted who also wanted me back. I asked her during the last time we were almost together, what do you even see in me? Sorry. I asked her during the last time we were almost together, what do you even see in me? I looked at her, an activist living out of her truck, dedicating all her time to helping homeless folks and fighting for racial justice, and had a hard time seeing what she saw in me. Admittedly, also an activist, but in my eyes, considerably less dedicated and often unsure of my real impact. I would love to tell you that, she said, but I'm not comfortable sharing that until you earn back my trust. I reached out to her the last week I was in Asheville, a month after I had called it with her for the last time. I was pretending I was only going to be gone for 6 months, but I knew deep down I wouldn't be returning. Not to live in Asheville. It was a dramatic week. The summer of 2020 protests against racial injustice had heated up again, and she was busy supporting in ways I was unsure of, but pretty sure were important. I can't remember if I told her that I thought I'd be leaving forever, but I do remember that she's the only person I actively regretted not saying goodbye to. So when I let her know I'd be flying out to visit Asheville, and she responded by inviting me to hang out not once, not twice, but 3 separate times during the week, I was surprised to say the least. Unfortunately, her very beloved cat died that week, and so instead of social gatherings, she spent the week receiving outpourings of love, food, and support. I thought for sure she'd cancel our walk, but lo and behold, Friday morning came along, and I was waiting, early and antsy, in a parking lot at Bent Creek. The sun filters through the trees differently there than it does here, luscious and tranquil. We walked along a creek and up a hill, getting turned around on the labyrinthine trails, her holding her mask up to her face as people passed. We sat for a while as she ate some food, then again by a creek as we finished up our walk. I was surprised by how much we knew about each other's lives, each other's ways of being in the world. It felt somehow both normal and intimate. When you really know someone, it turns out that time and distance don't matter so much. They're still them. You are still you. That quiet, timid longing was still there between us. I could see now that she didn't hate me for the pain I had caused her. She wanted to be close. She missed me. She just didn't want to be jerked around. Back in the parking lot, we did that thing where you don't want to leave and you don't know how to say goodbye. I wanted to say how much I cared about her, but would it seem insincere, given how much I had hurt her over the years? I also wanted to express concern. It seemed like she had taken on the world this year and didn't have much support in that. I wanted her to be okay. Something came to me from the previous evening when I was eating outside with friends for the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, candles on the table, stars shining through the lattice greenery-laden roof. I told Cynthia, "Last night my friend Amalia told us how to say I love you in Italian. You remember Amalia?" She nodded. Of course she remembered my friend. "You say, ti voglio bene, I want you to be well." I looked her in the face and said, "I want you to be well." And she responded, "I want you to be well." And then after the slightest pause, she said also, "I love you." In some similarly small fraction of time, out of my mouth came, "I love you too." We reached out a hand to each other. Hers was astonishingly soft, gentle, and tender in mine. We stayed there, holding each other's hands for a vanishingly small amount of time. Then we hugged. For perhaps the first time ever, I could feel her body relaxing into mine, as if letting go of a barrier she had been holding me outside of. As if she didn't feel the need to defend herself from me anymore. As if she was letting go, letting me in. I followed her truck out of the parking lot until she went a different direction. I did not sanitize my hand. There were errands I had planned on doing, but instead I wandered around downtown for a few hours, sipping a Cubano from my favorite coffee shop in the sunshine, floating. For the rest of the day, my hands felt extra sensitive, like I could still feel her hand in mine. I'm not trying to be in a relationship with Cynthia anymore. Maybe things would be different. Maybe I would have eventually done the work I needed to be with her if I had stayed. But I live far away now. I don't know still whether I deserve the redemption and forgiveness she gave me, or whether time simply winnowed away the hurt. I also don't know what she would say if she were to share what it is she sees in me. But I do know that I don't take for granted whatever beauty is between us. I tread lightly. I treat her more tenderly and kindly. And as the poet Khalil Gibran says, I wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving. For I am lucky to have loved and to have been loved by her. Thank you.
You can find Marika's music online at marikastrawmusic.com and learn more about LGBTQ plus identities on the Instagram account they co-moderate at Wallowa County LGBTQ. Hey, if you like what you saw, share Fishtrap Fireside with your family and friends. Anyone, anywhere can take in Fireside online at fishtrap.org and on Fishtrap's YouTube channel. The next Fishtrap Fireside comes to you Friday, February 4 with 3 more Wallowa County writers. I hope you take it in. We'll see you then.